Hi, and welcome to Hello Complex, the podcast where we explore the rise of agentic AI and what it means for the future. I'm Tachi, co founder and CEO of Playgrounds, and today is a very special behind the scenes episode with the Playgrounds team. We're the builders of Rig, Ryzome, and the Art Complex. Today I'm joined by Thierry, Stouffer, Garant, Mochan, Josh, Matthew, and Matthews, core members of Playgrounds and the creators of Rig, Ryzome, and the Art ecosystem. And in today's episode, we'll be pulling back the curtains on how Rig helps developers build reliable AI in Rust, and how Rhizome turns scattered thoughts and research into connected, AI augmented canvases. And we'll be sharing a few early thoughts on where we see the AI space moving in general, and how that impacts the direction of the Arc ecosystem. Along the way, we'll be sharing candid stories about building in public, shipping fast, breaking things, and what agentic AI means for real work today. Let's get into it. Before starting, a quick brief on Playgrounds. Playgrounds started with a very simple idea. AI should be a tool to help people move faster, think better, and do their best work. And this is why we built two things: Rig for developers and Rhizome for everyone who works with ideas. Before getting started, I'd love to do a quick intro around the room, starting with Thierry. If you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, I'm Thierry and I'm CPO of Playgrounds.
Hi, Thierry. And Stouffer, you're up next.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Stouffer, CTO of Playgrounds, and a Rust enjoyer.
Awesome. Garance, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. My name is Garance. I've been a full stack developer at Playgrounds for a bit more than 2 years now. And I'm very interested in everything related to AWS.
Amazing. And Mochan, you're up next.
Hey y'all, I'm Mo Chen. I'm a founding engineer here at Playgrounds, and I'm one of the co-architects of Rig.
Awesome. Awesome. Josh?
Hey everyone, I'm Josh and I am a senior engineer working on Rig, and I'm also the developer relations guy.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Matthew?
Hey, what's up, team? I'm Mathieu. I'm a computer engineer, but at Playgrounds, I'm a product manager and also some kind of like data wizard.
Love it. And last but not least, Matthews.
Hi, my name is Mateusz, and I am design engineer at Playgrounds, responsible for making front-end feels nice on Ryzome.
Awesome. It's really nice to have everyone on board and on the call. I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful fireside conversation on everything going on. And let's start with Rig, the foundation that lets teams build AI applications the right way. So, what exactly is Rig? Who is it for, and why does it matter? Would be our first segment for this podcast. And for our audiences, here's a quick top level explanation on what Rig is. You can think of Rig as a Rust LLM toolkit or a bag of tools that lets you build clean, powerful, scalable AI applications. Essentially, you can bring your specs or your problems, and Rig help you build the agents that can search data, call different AI models, or even run on the browser using Wasm, all without duct tape. But let's actually talk to the architects and developers of Rig and get their take and descriptions of Rig. Stouffer, in your own words, how would you describe Rig to our audiences?
I think from like a non-technical standpoint, you can think of Rig as just something that allows you to use any LLM provider that you want to build your application, and also gives you the tools to scaffold a lot of use cases, right? So you don't have to rewrite the wheel every time.
Awesome, awesome. And in your own, way, what was wrong with the typical or pre-existing AI dev stack that made you decide Rig needs to exist?
Well, I think, having worked a lot with Python in the past, and especially large Python code bases, Python is great for like small experimentations, but it tends to scale poorly when you increase the complexity and the size of your application. And prior to Rig, unfortunately, most of the AI tooling was built using Python and to some lesser extent TypeScript. So, when we wanted to build something in Rust, we were kind of out of luck, right? There was no good library to help us, scaffold our application and interact with all the different LLMs. So that was the main motivation to build Rig, in Rust. And where that decision really shines to use Rust for such a library is, when you think about these AI providers, right? They're always innovating, always adding more features to their AI models, but that also creates a lot of breaking changes when you're trying to interact with those models. One day ChatGPT doesn't have image support, the other day it does, right? How does your application react to that? And with Python and TypeScript, sometimes you would realize that something changed when your application crashed in production. But with Rig and more generally with Rust, this is a sort of mistake or bug that you can catch way earlier in the development cycle. So when you're talking about AI, where every time you write a prompt, it costs you money, bugs can get pretty expensive if they're not caught early. So that was the main motivator for us to build Rig, and I think the community has reacted this has resonated a lot with the community.
I definitely agree. I've seen the incredible growth of the Rig library over the last few months, and it's been quite encouraging. And so, just to recap for our audiences, would you say the main motivator is building a library that focuses on reliability, performance, and it's provider agnostic?
That's a good way to put it. We support, I think, around a dozen different AI providers and adding more every month. So, whether you're a Grok maximalist or an open AI enthusiast, we got you covered. And really, it's also the ability to change between each of them, knowing that your code won't break.
Awesome.
That's like
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you
main
for that clear explanation. I'm curious on Mochan, the other, architect of the Rig library. In the development of the framework itself, what was one design choice in Rig that, you know, that you believe quietly saves devs, the day-to-day pain of building AI applications?
So when it comes to the rig kind of design philosophy, I think a lot of the decision making with leaning into the strengths of Rust as a language kind of seeps into rig as well. And what this means is a lot of the ways you interact with the providers is very strictly modeled. It's very difficult to send something that's not expected in rig in the same way that's difficult to write code that doesn't compile in Rust. And what that benefits is as you're writing your agents or your multi-agent systems, as a developer, it just makes it way more confident that your system is going to run as expected, hours into runtime. So as Sofer alluded to, the fact that we've synchronized some of the models or all the models for talking to all the providers and provided a generalized interface that directly translates to being able to send the data to provider regardless of what provider you're talking to and know that the data you get back and the conversations you're having with these LLMs will still work as expected, moving forward. That's something where, in languages, unfortunately, like Python or TypeScript, if you're working on like a long chain of conversation, if you're building, an AI application, that's where you're really feeling the pain of, some bug propping up, 2 days later and kind of blowing up in your face.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm curious, Mochan. There's quite a lot of frameworks and libraries out there. Some of which are pretty big. We have LangChain being one of the biggest Python frameworks for building AI applications. How how does Rig compare to some of the alternatives in the market today?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. There is definitely, the stark difference in language choice.
Hmm.
We're starting to see some frameworks like tap into Rust a little bit. But the choice of language is really where the differentiation comes from. But even beyond that, I think there's aspects of what you're planning to do with that framework that really stand out. If I'm using a system like LangChain or some of the other AI frameworks in Python, Pydantic AI and such, there's definitely of an idea of like rapid prototyping. You might be running some small scripts to test out a program, but when it's building a production styled app, it's very difficult to get that app running as expected in production, kind of from the point of view of it working without bugs. So that's where I think Rig kind of differentiates itself as a productivity engine, especially on teams. So if I'm, working with Stouffer on an AI application, there's a degree of confidence I'm getting knowing that whatever PR comes in from my side or from Stouffer's side is likely going to work in a deployment situation. It's much higher in the Rust and Rig environment than in other frameworks. I think that makes a big difference when you're collaborating on larger AI applications, rather than spending so much time, writing a lot of tests and doing a lot of, important testing that you still do on the Rust side. There's like a base level of confidence that your code is going to work as expected.
Hmm. That's very compelling, especially for those who are currently deciding on what framework or library they need to build their next AI applications. It comes down to the decision between building something that is future proof and can scale, versus using an alternative for prototyping and experimentation, for example. Thank you for that insight, Mochan. I'd love to hear from Josh, the senior engineer building Rig. I think you have the closest touch to the builders in the Rig community, and also have the closest touch to some of the features and problem sets that are coming up from developers. So could you just, for the audience, give us your favorite story of what developers are building, what you're observing as people are interacting with Rig today?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the key trends coming out recently is that we have kind of hit a point where people want to start using Rig in their production systems. So for example, Coral Protocol, who are building a blockchain for an internet of agents, is using Rig as part of their software development kit, right? They are, well, not regular contributors, but they have posted issues before to help with their library. So that's been really cool. A lot of our most serious users are also regular contributors to the library, right? So we kind of have a ecosystem where it's not only Rig providing value to the users, but the users are also kind of giving back, which is really awesome. And I work quite closely with some of them, and they also use the main branch for Rig, which means they're kind of on the bleeding edge where all like the latest changes are being pushed. And they can use pretty much the changes as they come.
Awesome. That's really exciting. I've spent some time looking at the discussion sections and some of the issues on the Rig GitHub repo. It's really cool. Even how global it is as well. I think that we were talking about how we saw some contributors writing in Mandarin in their issues, and then you were responding in Mandarin. I think that was quite exciting.
Yeah, I had to use the translator, but it worked out in the end.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I have a few more questions for you, Josh.
Yeah.
What are some of the most asked questions about Rig? And this is your opportunity to essentially give like a download of FAQs with answers,
Yeah.
maybe like the top, 3 or 4 top questions being asked.
I think the first question that comes to mind is why Rust? a lot of people kind of expect you kind of almost expect Rig to be a Python library, but because of the way that obviously we've architected it in Rust, the library itself is quite robust already. So by leveraging the strengths of the Rust language, right, we are able to make it a much better library. But also on top of that, we can kind of convert to Python through language findings and things like that. The second question, I guess, would be... Actually, to be honest, the second and third questions are normally typically reserved for, like, why isn't X feature out?
Which is good, you know?
Just because... Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, when you're working on production systems, you have certain demands and requirements, and those need to be fulfilled by the library, right? So we have, you know, certain obligations now to our users that we need to fulfill on our end. For example, you know, we can't well, I guess we still make breaking changes every release, right? But we just have to make sure, you know, certain bugs don't get passed through, like you know, reviews, for example.
Yeah.
And similar things to that, really.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I appreciate the care. You know, when Rig had a breakout in the community, you know, one of the feedbacks that stuck to me to this very day, it was the founder of Abstract Chain, and he mentioned that Rig is the most well-maintained and thoughtfully designed library out there today. And I think that's a testament to the care that you, Stouffer, Mochan, put into making sure that, you know, every decision is well thought out and spec'd out, and not rushing to release features that might introduce breaking changes or tech debt in the future. So wonderful work with that. Just a few more questions. I think this is more of a rapid fire one, actually. What is one tip that you would give to a dev who's moving from, you know, a Python stack to a Rust plus Rig stack?
If you're having any trouble, make sure you open an issue.
Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, most of the Rust ecosystem is open source, so if there's like any libraries you're having issues with, I would say most library authors are actually pretty responsive.
Yeah. I'm curious on Stouffer's thought.
I would add,
Yeah.
I would add, you know, listen to the compiler, trust the compiler. You know, it's not like other languages, like the compiler will tell you exactly what's wrong with your code. You just have to read the message, right? So it's a different mindset, but it helps a lot in the long run.
Yeah. And Mochan, what would be your tip?
Yeah, I mean, unlike Stouffer over here, I actually do still like Python a lot, but you know, when I started writing Rust like a year and a half ago, it was definitely kind of like the big meme of like going from like Python land, no types, just kind of vibes, going to Rust like hardcore engineering, and it was pretty daunting at first. But really, as Stouffer said, it's not even like the compiler is like the trustworthy. It's like your helping hand. It's like AI before AI. You start writing some Rust, and the compiler is like, "Hey, you made a mistake there. You can go and fix it." So really, don't be afraid of Rust. Embrace it if you do take the plunge. But lastly, just take advantage of the resources available. Hop in the Discord, ask around. We'd love to help you out in your journey of learning Rust and point you to the right direction. I think it's easy to get daunted by a language like Rust that feels so overbearing and complex, but really the language is elegantly designed to make it easier to get into with a compiler that checks your work and an auto formatter that everybody uses. So it just makes it for a consistent experience. It might be even easier to learn than, you know, other foundational languages as well.
Amazing. Thank you. So Rust is great. It has the right tools. Use the compiler. It's your best friend. And as Josh said, if you run into issues, drop an issue on the repo or join us in Discord, and we'll be happy to help you out. Thanks, guys. Before we wrap things up on Rig, I want to get a sense and maybe give our audience a sense of the adoption of Rig. And this is kind of passing the mic back to our in-house evangelists of the Rig library. What are some exciting statistics on adoption for the Rig library today? Who's using it?
Right. So, as far as production goes, there are an untold number of private repos at the moment where people are kind of experimenting with it. But there's a few that I want to just mainly point out. So there's Kaido, I believe. They're like a lightweight security web auditing toolkit. The founder, I believe, is using Rig in some mature projects. Coral Protocol, as I mentioned before, is using Rust in their SDK. We recently just achieved nearly 4.2k GitHub stars. So far, growth has primarily been quite consistent. So while we've been developing and stuff, we haven't, lost momentum. Pretty much with every update, we're just getting more and more GitHub stars and people are writing about us. So
Awesome.
I should also mention there's also some talks lined up regarding Rig. So be prepared.
Be prepared. And for our audiences listening, these talks and where to find them will be available in the show notes. So just to encapsulate everything we've talked about with Rig essentially is a library that allows you to ship powerful, scalable, well-written AI applications. It comes with dozens of examples and tools and documentations to help you get off the ground. It's designed for multi-agent orchestration and applications all the way from vector searches across Quadrant, Mailvis, Postgres, SQLite. It's provider agnostic, which means that you can mix and match, swap, or chain models like OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, XAI, DeepSeek, and many more. And it also has the Ryzome integration, which allows you to build AI applications that can run natively in your browser. Essentially, it's a toolkit that allows a dev to not just imagine what they can build, but also have the right tools and to have a starting point that can scale. I really appreciate the conversations, Mochan, Stolfer, and Josh, and thank you for your hard work on building the Rig library. So if Rig helps developers build AI systems, what about non-developers? Those who are not interested or in the market for building the applications, but they need a powerful tool to do their day-to-day work, to use AI to augment how they do knowledge exploration, knowledge management, produce outcomes that are meaningful to whatever work it is they're doing on a day-to-day. What kind of tools might exist? And how can we produce that and deliver that to the end users? We've built something really special in Playgrounds, and it's called Ryzome. And of course, in true fashion, Ryzome is a service or an application that's built on top of the Rig library. So in this next segment, I'll be introducing, what this service is and the pain points it's trying to solve. I think it's best to start by painting a picture. Many of us in our day-to-day work, most of us are already using applications like ChatGPT, Claude, and the rest. We end up reaching a point where we've done so much work and research. We're brainstorming an idea. We're thinking about, what the next iteration of a report or a paper, or we're doing some, deep research on some obscure topic. And we get to a point where using platforms like ChatGPT's chat interface and Claude becomes actually limiting to the type of work that we need to do. Your ideas starts to get scattered around multiple chats, multiple threads, with no easy way to branch out of these chat threads. And you end up having silos of information with no way to recombine them or have a better view of what your mind has created over time. The truth is, linear threads don't necessarily match how our minds work. Our minds work in networks. You start with one idea and it branches out into two or three that are still connected in some way. And with the current interfaces that are available in the market today, it's very easy for your context to get lost in multiple threads. It's very easy for your momentum to die as you try to find where that insight you had, 7 hours ago or 2 days ago is in hundreds of threads and tabs. The truth is, the current form factor of AI chat apps is very limiting. And we identified this problem and devised a way to solve this. And that's what Ryzome is. Ryzome is our answer to an AI enhanced environment, or as we call it, a workspace, where you can maximize what you can do with AI with your day to day work. And for this, I'd love to fold in Thierry to introduce Rhizome and tell the audience what it is and what it's trying to solve. Hey, Thierry.
Yeah. So, hi. I thought that maybe something interesting, like before we get into what exactly Rhizome is, we could, and Stouffer can jump in here, is what Rhizome is not. Because I think a lot of, almost all projects in AI right now are essentially building agents. And these like most of these agents are the main thing is that they try to plug in an AI into an existing system, like an existing API system, or like they give it a bunch of tools, and they try to get essentially to scaffold this entire agent into doing something useful. But the usually the main problem is that the end result is always too brittle, so that you can't really continuously build on top of it. Maybe the only exception would be Manus, where they gave the agent about 4 tools, and that was like Manus was able to like master them enough to like get somewhere pretty close to like really good outcomes. But even then, it can still kind of go off the rails and produce something that is not that useful, right? And so when we were thinking about what would be solving our own problems and what could essentially mesh well with the limitations of LLMs, it was kind of clear that it had to be something that had a pretty high tolerance for, LLM style mistakes. And it can be something that you would need to rely on, like in an automation kind of sense, where where it had to like make judgment calls for you, and you wouldn't be like suffering from the decisions, right? And so that's why we decided to instead move towards a new kind of interface to interact with the LMs as they are, where they're more of a tool for ideation rather than essentially automate stuff for you. Because in the end, like normal software is probably the best thing to use in order to automate stuff, and adding or forcing LLMs to do like add to that automation usually does not work that well. And so, yeah, Rhizome is essentially a new kind of interface to interact with LLMs in a nonlinear way. As opposed to chat, where you have a constant back and forth with the model in the conversation that follows a single thread. You essentially just start from any kind of content and then start following any threads of ideation that you can think of, and then even have them weave into each other and maybe even create something entirely new from, where you decide to take things and what the AI model itself thinks. Like, it also makes connections for you, and you can follow that too, right?
Thank you. I think that's a very powerful way to describe, the design philosophy of what Rhizome is and what Rhizome is not. I'm curious also, Stouffer, if you have a way to describe Ryzome to add on to what Thierry has described?
Yeah, I think to add to what he was saying about automation, um, you would think that LLMs, would be very good at automation, and they are to some extent for specific parts of it. But there's definitely an over reliance on LLMs in many cases, where let's say you want to build some, workflow that um, fetches your inbox, your emails in your inbox, sorts them in some different buckets, and then depending on the bucket, do something else, right? Like often you'll see people try to use LLMs at every step, right? But you don't need an LLM to fetch your inbox emails, right? Like going through an LLM could actually lead to a worse result. Um, and the first iteration of Ryzome, was leaning a bit more in that direction. But now that we've refocused more on like they said, the ideation, but also just the processing of documents, right? It's like, okay, here's a draft of some project I'm working on. Can you extract me some user stories or some, tasks? What are some common pitfalls about my idea, things like that, and have that organized in a canvas. LLMs are language models, right? They're not tool models, and in that sense, Rhizome is a language app first and foremost.
Yeah, and I can maybe even add to that where, like today, even like a current, like a fundamental limitation that that might be solved this cycle or maybe in another one is usually all of the really valuable information that you want to work with that you would leave an agent essentially think about and maybe act upon is real time data. And usually the way that you would get that real time data is through tools. But the problem is the AI models only have real context about like ideas or maybe real world entities that are part of our common knowledge, but they don't have any context on, say, an order that is in an inventory system, right? Even if you give them, like expressly give them the necessary context, like it could tell you stuff about it, but it couldn't essentially retrieve that particular item on its own unless the entire system is purpose built only for that, right? So being able to like fetch the right real-time data in order to like process it and act upon it is still a very kind of brittle, unsolved problem.
Thank you. I this is like really compelling, and I think it's quite a different approach to not only seeing what LLMs should be and how, but especially how they should be used for real work. I think this could be very interesting to a lot of our audiences, whether they're technical or non-technical, who are curious on what else can we do with AI today. I think that you've kind of laid it out in a very clear way, and why we're taking, some might say, quite a different direction than what most application developers in the AI space are taking today. I'm curious now on kind of the day-to-day of the product itself. So let's give our audience who might not be aware or familiar with Rhizome, and this is for you, Garance, if you could give an overlay on Rhizome, the feature sets, and what are the experiences like when someone gets on Rhizome, if today?
Yeah. So the idea of Ryzome is kind of like a virtual whiteboard. So in more detail, basically, it will allow you to connect ideas together. And an idea can be text, an image. For now, we just have text and images. But to connect those with an AI model, such that this AI model can receive this content that you give it, generate new information based on this, and then you can keep building off of what the the AI model has generated, and you can do so kind of infinitely in all directions. So it'll allow you to kind of organize your thoughts with a smart with a smart helper to guide you.
So essentially, it's a blank canvas. So I'm going to walk through the steps just as a visual audio representation. So it's a blank canvas, and on this canvas, you are presented with some object that allows you to insert your content. And we call these nodes, as you say. And so a node is essentially kind of like a text or image input environment or container. And then you can connect multiple nodes together, and we connect them with what you call them edges. And we can infinitely connect multiple nodes together. And each node is essentially AI augmented. Would that be a good way to describe the, the application components?
Yes.
Okay, that's really interesting. In your opinion, what's something really exciting or cool about Ryzome that you've built that you're really looking forward to people experiencing once they encounter it for the first time?
Something the team has built that is really cool is the thinking and the streaming of agent text into the Ryzome canvas. So basically, when you ask a question or when you put a prompt in your node, the agent will show you step by step what it's thinking as it's determining an answer, and while it's generating text, it's gonna show it step by step so that you get the response, not all at once, but slowly. And I think that's going to be a really good tool for people to use.
No, that's really awesome, Garan. So I'm really excited for people to experience using Ryzome. I've tested out a lot of these features: image dropping, copy pasting, and even the Markdown. The decision to go through to Markdown, which is curious as well. You know, why did we decide Markdown to be the way to input or typing text into Ryzome?
That's a good question. I think it's because Markdown is so easy to use because you're just writing plain text. And not only that, but you can like integrate different content types in Markdown. You can like integrate images, files, audio, all in text. And it makes it so that it's all those different content types can be reunited in a single node, and just by using this very easy language. And with Ryzome, you can use Markdown with image you can like add images into your Markdown, and the agent will be able to extract those images and use them in its context. So I think it's a good way to unite all these different types of content type into a single node.
Mm-hmm. And in the world of AI today, there's so many models. We have Gemini, we have Claude, GPT, XAI. There's a myriad of them. That's not even including the open source local models as well. What model are we using in Ryzome, and why did we make that decision?
We are using the Gemini models, and due to streaming, we can actually have more powerful models because the more powerful models take a bit longer to answer. And so with streaming, there's less of a lag between when the user asks a question and when the model starts to answer. So the streaming implementation really allows us to leverage the more powerful models.
I see. That's really compelling. And I'd love to pass the mic off to Stoffer as well. I think this was one of the discussions we had internally when it came to deciding which model was the best. You know, could you share with the audience some of the trade-offs that we were aware of, if there was any, between choosing Gemini and not other models as well? And what are some things that you might get with Gemini that you might not get with other models?
Yeah, so I mean, few people know this because it was when Ryzome was still closed, like a closed beta. But we used to support many models and had the ability to let users, choose their models, enter their own API keys, whatever. And initially we thought, more power to the users means, better product, right? But turns out there's actually a blocker, to our big surprise, because most people just want something that works well out of the box. And we then took the decision to essentially pick a model and stick to it and really go deep in it. And that model that we landed on was Gemini for a couple of reasons. But the most compelling is that it supports the widest range of different content types, which, they're not all supported in Ryzome yet, but we're adding more and more every day. And without, leaking too much of the coming features, one of the things we're really excited about is Gemini's ability to handle YouTube videos as a first-class citizen, right? So eventually you'll be able to just drop in a YouTube video, have the AI essentially watch the video for you, and then you can essentially ask it anything about the video, right? So, we're not closing the door to supporting other models in the future, but for now, we are definitely sticking with one that supports the widest range of use cases and that just works really well in practice.
That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate the clarity on that, and looking forward to that feature of having YouTube videos being first-class citizens. I think that'll add a powerful capabilities to what users can do with Ryzome. Let's talk
Soon TM.
Soon TM. So we've talked a little bit about what it is, what it's not, and some of the features that comes with Ryzome. Let's talk about some of the stories and use cases. And I'd love to pass the mic off to Mathieu, who handles, the management of the product and consumers of Ryzome. Could you give us a little bit of a vignette on Ryzome's use cases and story?
Yeah, so that first discussion with Thierry and Stoffer, I think, really shed the light behind the core vision of what we're trying to do here. First, we're trying to move away from like end-to-end automation that results like in super brittle apps that don't really do what you're trying to do. And secondly, like these first chatbots or the first gen AI apps that we've seen with ChatGPT, Gemini, and pretty much like all the competitors, like it tends to try to do too much, even with super small prompts. And we've seen that with deep research, the deep research features that they pretty much all rolled out. It's quite useful and it's very impressive. But at the end, it's really trying to expand this super small prompt to a gigantic report that is not really that is quite hard to use at the end, depending on your use case, right? So either if you're a researcher or a researcher trying to build a bibliography for your research, a founder trying to better understand links and action items after some customer interviews, or a writer trying to map out some new ideas for a book. These are all quite complex use cases that features like deep research will probably give you a good starting point, but it won't help you actually do the actual work. And I think it's a core like feature of Ryzome here, or like a core thing that we're trying to do is, instead of using LLMs to give you a good starting point on a project or on some work, that it can really be the kind of workspace or workplace where you can accomplish this work and end up with real actionable either documents, action items, or whatever you're trying to really accomplish here.
Interesting. So, if you could categorize the user profiles, what would those shapes look like today? I know it's still pretty early, but what are some emergent, profiles that we're seeing enjoying or we're anticipating enjoying Ryzome?
Yeah. So we can see kind of two categories. First, there's the categories where you have a lot of content as input. So these would be as I said, people like researchers, either academic or in the finance world, right? You have a ton of content as input that you're trying to find the difference between noise and the like real information in these documents. And of course, like you're a researcher, Ryzome can help you grouping into different themes or categories the content that you're putting as input, where it being PDFs, soon web pages, or linked to your own data storage like Google Drive, and then visually map these different categories before you can try and apply your own knowledge on top of this work. So first use case would be users trying to map out their own content or trying to search for new content. And then the second kind of category of use case would be users that try to generate a lot of content. So one could be a writer trying to just brain dump some key themes or key ideas, and then do some iterative work to try to map its characters, or map the different chapters or scenes that would let these characters interact to each other.
Amazing.
So,
Okay, so it's two categories, like there's the explorers and then the creators. And so the explorers could be researchers, students, ideators, who are essentially have a lot of information to navigate, and they need an AI companion in their note-taking or knowledge management environments to do so. And then we have the creators, who are the ones who generate new knowledge or build on top of old knowledge. So writers, maybe even founders who want to create new iterations of their product and they want to write about it. That's very compelling. I'm also very curious on the new types of use cases and users that will emerge the more Ryzome matures. I think that I'm really excited about content creators. I mean, they do fall under the creator category once we have YouTube and video support, more multimodality capabilities in Ryzome. But that's really compelling. I know you manage a lot of the product management, and you have a close touch with the users. Has there been any interesting stories so far that you've seen?
yeah, well, we look quite a bit at like user recordings, or try to better understand from the data that we are able to retrieve in the app, trying to better, because we might have our own ideas of what users are trying to do, and I think that the two tags that you gave, explorers and creators, that's such a great naming scheme. But behind these more like large concepts, right? Like, what are the actual actions that users are trying to do, and whenever and like, since you can compound this at like it's at an infinite level, right? Anytime you see a canvas with like hundreds of nodes, like being all intertwined, like it's really mesmerizing to look at, and it's quite an enjoyable enjoyable activity to do.
Yeah, mesmerizing is the right word there. Thank you for painting a picture of what's coming out of Ryzome today, and what we're looking forward to. And I'm also curious, Matus. I know you are you're a great front end developer. You've been helping us design and build the user experience with Ryzome, and you've done incredible work with focusing on the intuitiveness and the feel of Ryzome. Could you tell us a little bit about your philosophy and how you go about making sure that the user interface and the experience of Rhizome is as intuitive as possible? What's your process like, and what's your design philosophy in general?
Mhm. Yes. So my design philosophy is that design is not only how it looks, but also how it works. And I think to make product work great, you need to be paired as a designer with product managers and the engineers. So it's like a really cohesive process that allows you to find a great experience for users. When it comes to design the product, I'm really focused on simplifying. And simplifying is not about removing things, but also distilling them to the essence. And to be able to do so, it requires a deep understanding of a product.
Amazing. That's a really good philosophy to have, and I think that it shows in the way you've approached everything from the dashboard to the way the components are designed, the way the edges are designed, and just the full user flow on that. What are some really interesting or experimental maybe approaches that you've taken to Rhizome that you're excited to see users experience?
Yes. So I think to get the best user experience, you kind of need to combine data and research. And when I'm saying a research, it means not only how like user using your app, but actually, for example, like historical references. And so
Mm,
when I was designing a dashboard and canvas editor, I I realized how I was studying a history of art during high school. And the best way to do so was to have like either a visual timelines or a mind maps. And that experience of me learning and building something with mind maps, I was trying to kind of get the same feeling uh, translated into Rhizome app.
amazing. That's really interesting. Before wrapping it up, let's talk about some of the features. Recently, I think this was yesterday, we made an announcement for some of the newest features available in Rhizome. Just for our audience, some of these include, cross canvas intelligence, and what that really means is being able to essentially copy your nodes or your content across multiple canvases. And this essentially allows the unlock of information. You might be doing research on one topic in one canvas, but being able to migrate that through copy paste into another canvas so you can continue building off of that is really compelling. As Grant mentioned earlier, being able to see the AI as it reasons and streams a response is one that we really are excited about because it increases the immersive experience that you get with Rhizome. We're putting a lot of effort into the organization and cleanliness of nodes and your canvas in general. And so we started with node labeling, which allows you to tag and label your nodes, but also use those tags as references in another prompt, and many other features that have been released recently. But before we wrap it up, maybe Thierry, if you can give a glimpse of some of the features that you are excited that are coming up over the next few weeks.
Something that will unlock a lot of possibilities too is we're gonna soon be able to publish. Like users will be able to publish their canvases and share them wide, and eventually that will mean that it would be the first step towards being able to like eventually collaborate on the same canvases.
Mm. Yes, that's a really exciting one. Yeah, collaboration, sharing, publishing. I think the community and user base would really love that. So you can be not only a creator but a distributor of your work. Thank you guys so much for the deep dive into Rhizome. I think this is a really fun conversations, and I'm beaming with smiles just listening to you guys just share, this opus that you're creating with Rhizome. It's quite a lot of work, but the mission is pretty clear, and I appreciate the efforts into building something that's meaningful. So the main goal with Rhizome is less software, more flow. And I think that we're really, zeroing in on something really compelling, specifically a pain points that exists in the market today. And so anyone who's interested in getting started with Rhizome, the details will be in the show notes. You can go to rhizome.ai, that's RYZOME.ai to get started with Rhizome. And we'll be looking forward to seeing what you create and share across social media. And join our Discord if you're interested in talking to us a little bit more about Rhizome or if you have any features or questions about it. The final segment of this podcast is for the third thing that we build at Playgrounds, which is the Arc complex, or as we call it, the Arc ecosystem. And the Arc ecosystem, for those who are not familiar, is a coordination layer that essentially orchestrates and incentivizes the development of not only powerful AI applications, but users to discover and use these powerful AI applications. We released the Arc ecosystem, at least what I like to call the prologue of it, last year in December, and it's been thriving. We've seen a lot of members of the community join in to you know lend their intelligence and their expertise towards building agents and applications, sharing excitement about what's going on in the AI space. And we've seen a lot of growth of developers coming out of the ecosystem to contribute to the rig library. We've had projects come in that's built amazing project like SoGraph, Listen, Agent Tank, Ask Jimmy, and the rest of them. And in this segment, I will just give a teaser or a tidbit on what the next chapter of the Arc ecosystem is going to look like. It's still very early, so I wouldn't go into too much details, but this would just essentially set the stage for our listeners to kind of absorb and maybe have a food for thought. Over the last few years, AI has learned a lot from us, mostly in one big gulp, honestly. And the industry is optimized for extraction. You capture expertise once, you train a model, and you move on. The problem is simple when you think about it. Extraction only works once. It doesn't keep the experts in the loop, and it stalls the long tail of real world problems. But what if we flipped the incentive from extraction to evolution? ARC is our exploration of a coordination layer where improvements are continuous, verified, and fairly attributed. In this future that we're designing, app developers can ask for specific upgrades to a model, domain experts can contribute their know how, improvements are tested against clear benchmarks, and when those improvements are used, the people who made them possible share in the value. There's no hype here, it's just principles and attribution you can trust and rewards tied to real usage. It's about turning expertise into a renewable resource so AI keeps getting better with us and not without us. We're still early in the development of the next chapter of ARC, but we're listening, we're prototyping, we're researching, we're interviewing founders and developers in the space, and we're pressure testing ideas with builders and experts. I won't go too much into the details of the mechanics today, but if it resonates with you, I want to hear from you. ARC is shifting from a one time harvest to continuous growth, and for extracting value to compounding it together. There'll be more details on the next chapter of ARC once it's live, but I'm really excited for the direction that we're taking things to with the ARC ecosystem. And that's where I'll leave that for the ARC ecosystem. There's more to come. It's been a wonderful, wonderful podcast episode today. I really appreciate the time that the team has spent talking about everything that's going on within everything that we're building, from Rig to Rhizome to the Arc ecosystem. And before wrapping it up, I would love to do a fun, quick lightning round Q&A style question for the team. I'll start with Garance. Just a lightning round question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is a feature that's not available in Ryzome that you're really looking forward to building at some time when you have the time?
This is a feature like way down the road, but I'm really excited about having a meta agent in Ryzome. So it would be an agent that can modify your Ryzome canvas for you based on a set of instructions.
Ooh, very cool. I love it. The meta agent in Ryzome. Thank you, Garance. Matheus, is there any interesting features or components that are coming up soon with Ryzome that you're excited to share with the community once it's live?
Mhm. I think that right now, for me, the most exciting features would be community. And when you think about community, and people building their canvas, it's really easier to understand the product through people's work. And this is actually how I was learning how to design. I was just imitating others' work, and that gives me like a great fundament of design rules, principles. And once I understand the fundaments of design, then I was able to create my own things. And I think that this approach could be, um, applicable to the people using the canvas. So through published canvases, they can get the basics of a product, and once they get the basics, they can build their own stuff and share it with people. Also, I think that community has a great potential for being much more than published canvases. I think that we can also that community can include like a mini apps or maybe a plugins that people can use. So I think that community for me is the most exciting part right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matheus. Really, really excited to have you build in Ryzome, and I'm sure the Ryzome users and the community appreciate all of the amazing effort and thoughtfulness that you put into designing every component within the Ryzome environment. Thank you. Josh, your next lightning round question. What is one rig example that every dev should try first?
Multi-10 streaming. Since we recently upgraded it and it's now part of, well, it will very shortly be part of the official rig library.
Awesome. And Thierry, you're next. What is a moment a user surprised you with Ryzome?
I would have to say Kezo because, well, clearly Kezo, he's definitely one of our biggest supporters, and even before when we were only still prototyping Ryzome, he managed to create entire like maps of mentors and essentially use that as kind of his own guiding light almost, right? And that was before we had our app and everything, and it was mostly an Obsidian plugin.
Amazing. Yes. Big fan of Kezo. He's one of our biggest evangelists for Ryzome. Next up, Stouffer. Are you ready? What is one
Yeah,
myth
go.
about AI that you wish would just die?
Oh, I mean, man, there's so many of them. But if I had to pick one, it would be that AIs can't read your mind. So, like, next time you're trying to vibe debug your app, instead of just saying, like, my app doesn't work, fix it, give it some context, right? Say, like, hey, this particular thing doesn't work. I've checked these things, so I know it's not XYZ. I'm using this stack, this type, blah, blah, blah. Here's my API, whatever, right? The more you give it, the better it's going to work.
Amazing. Thank you. Mathieu, you're next. What's a less software, more flow decision with Ryzome that we've made recently that you're excited about?
I guess it would have to be, or well, actually, a very good example is what we call content drop-in. So the ability to seamlessly add node content in your canvas just by copy pasting instead of having to go through a complex import flow either for a file or even it would be in our next features using Google Drive or stuff. So just simple copy paste, boom, it's there, and you can use it.
Amazing. Thank you. And last but not least, Mo-chan, what's something that excites you about the future of Rig?
Considering that I'm super bullish on small embeddable models, and then those being orchestrated with Rig, I think the feature set I'm really looking forward to, for Rig, where it can go into is, really diving into multi-agent systems based on these small models, whether it's using, one of the amazing frameworks like Candle or Burn, as a way to load like really small models, and then, using Rig to kind of use them in highly specific situations, and have them all talk to each other. That's super exciting, as like a deviation from like the trend of really large AI models right now from like the big providers. So I'm really looking forward to messing around with those when they become more mainstream.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, we did it, guys. That was a wonderful podcast. That's it for the special Playgrounds Roundtable of Hello Complex. Huge thanks to Thierry, Stouffer, Garance, Mochan, Josh, Mathieu, and Matthews. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to build AI in Rust, check out Rig. If you want to think and research with AI that understands your content and context, try Ryzome. It's live at ryzome.ai. And if the vision for ARC sparks something, reach out to us. We're listening, and we'll love to hear what you're thinking and building. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And from all of us at Playgrounds, let's build the tools that help us think, create, and deploy at the speed of curiosity. And see you next time.